They say every house has its secrets, but some secrets are better left buried. For Lena and Mark, a young couple brimming with dreams, inheriting a sprawling, Gothic mansion felt like winning the lottery. Perched on a desolate hill, overlooking a town that had long forgotten it, the house was a relic of a bygone era, its stone walls weathered by time and neglect. They pushed open the heavy oak doors, the air thick with the scent of dust and decay, and stepped into their new life. The inheritance was a surprise, a distant relative they barely knew. As they explored the labyrinth of shadowed hallways and forgotten rooms, they stumbled upon something truly bizarre. Behind a small, locked door on the top floor was a room frozen in time. It was a toymaker's workshop, but the shelves weren't lined with half-finished wooden soldiers or teddy bears. Instead, dozens upon dozens of porcelain dolls stared back at them from the gloom. Each one was unnervingly lifelike, with glassy, intelligent eyes, delicate, rosy cheeks, and dresses of faded lace and silk. There was a girl in a sailor suit, a boy holding a tiny hoop, a pair of twins with identical, unnerving smiles. They were beautiful, but there was something profoundly unsettling about them, a silent assembly waiting for an audience that never came. Lena felt a chill crawl up her spine, but Mark, ever the pragmatist, just laughed it off as a creepy but valuable collection. They decided to leave the room as it was, a strange memorial to the mysterious toymaker who had once lived there. That first night, sleep did not come easily. A floorboard creaked upstairs. A faint, almost imperceptible whisper seemed to drift from the direction of the doll room. Mark dismissed it as the old house settling, but Lena couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The next morning, they returned to the doll room. The doll in the sailor suit was no longer on its shelf. It was now sitting in a small rocking chair in the corner of the room, its head tilted slightly, as if it had just turned to look at them. Mark tried to find a rational explanation. Maybe the floor was slanted. Maybe a gust of wind had knocked it over. But there were no open windows, and the floor was perfectly level. The days that followed were a slow descent into a waking nightmare. Objects would move on their own. A teacup would slide across a table. A door they had just closed would be found wide open. The whispers grew louder, more distinct, weaving through the silence of the house like phantom threads. Lena would hear her name being called in a high, childish voice when she was alone. The dolls themselves seemed to be the epicenter of the strangeness. Their positions would change overnight. One day the twins would be facing each other, as if sharing a secret. The next, they would be staring directly at the door, their painted smiles seeming to widen into menacing grins. The glassy eyes followed Lena and Mark wherever they went. It felt like a constant, silent judgment, a suffocating pressure that was beginning to fray their nerves. Lena started documenting the changes, taking photos, trying to find a pattern, some logic in the madness. But there was none. The house was playing by its own rules, and the dolls were the game masters. One evening, while researching the history of the mansion in the dusty local library, Lena uncovered the story of the Toymaker. His name was Silas Blackwood, a recluse who was shunned by the townspeople. He had a daughter, Elara, whom he adored, but Elara fell gravely ill. Desperate Silas, who was rumored to dabble in dark arts, performed a forbidden ritual to save her. He tried to bind her fading spirit to her favorite doll, a beautiful creation with hair as black as night and eyes as blue as the sea. But the ritual went horribly wrong. It didn't save his daughter. It trapped a fragment of her pained soul, and in doing so, opened a gateway for something else. Something ancient and hungry. The entity latched onto the dolls, animating them, feeding on the despair and fear of anyone who dared to live in the house. The legend said Silas himself became the first victim, his sanity unraveling until he was nothing more than a ghost in his own home. Attached to the old newspaper clipping was a faded photograph. Silas Blackwood, a gaunt man with haunted eyes, stood next to a little girl holding a doll. Lena's blood ran cold. It was the doll from the center of the collection, the one they had nicknamed the Queen. The Toymaker hadn't just created dolls, he had created vessels, and the entity he had unleashed was still there, waiting. When Lena rushed back to the mansion to show Mark, she found him standing transfixed in the hallway, staring at the closed door of the doll room. "They're singing, Lena," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Can't you hear them?" All Lena could hear was a low, discordant hum, a sound that made her teeth ache. The malevolent energy in the house had become a palpable force, pressing in on them from all sides. The whispers were no longer just whispers. They were threats. "Stay with us. Play with us. You'll never leave." That night, the full horror was unleashed. The door to the doll room flew open with a deafening crash. The dolls were no longer on their shelves. They stood in the doorway, a silent, menacing army. The Queen doll was at the front, its head slowly turning, its glass eyes glowing with a faint, predatory light. The air grew impossibly cold. Shadows danced and writhed on the walls, twisting into grotesque shapes. Lena and Mark were paralyzed with fear, their escape routes cut off by the small porcelain figures that now moved with a terrifying, unnatural grace. The Queen doll took a step forward, its tiny leather shoes making a soft tapping sound on the wooden floor. The Toymaker promised us playthings. A chorus of voices whispered, seeming to come from every doll at once. "He grew old and boring, but you are new." The couple backed away, stumbling down the grand staircase, but the dolls were everywhere. They appeared at the top of the stairs in the doorways, peering from behind furniture. Their painted smiles were stretched into leering, hungry grins. Mark screamed as a small doll, the one with the hoop, latched onto his leg, its porcelain fingers surprisingly strong. Lena tried to pull it off, but more came, swarming them, their cold, hard bodies like a tide of living stone. They weren't just moving. They were hunting. The curse wasn't just in the house. It was in them. Silas Blackwood hadn't just trapped an entity. He had created a prison that required new jailers, new playmates, for eternity. The last thing Lena saw before the darkness consumed her was the Queen doll's face, its blue eyes filled with an ancient, triumphant malice. Their screams echoed through the empty halls, unheard by anyone. In the dusty, silent mansion on the hill, the dolls had found new friends to play with. Lena and Mark were finally home, their sanity slipping away as they joined the collection, their silent screams now part of the house's ghostly symphony. Forever bound to the Toymaker's hungry dolls, their fate was sealed. 2 more human puppets in a game they could never win. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy tales of haunted houses and cursed objects, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next journey into the shadows. Stay safe and check your shelves.